Most people associate this holiday. If you were to go down and say, what do you think of when you think of Independence Day? 4th of July. They would say, oh, fireworks, grilling burgers, day off, depending upon some neighborhoods, you might say, having a cold one or something. You know, street parties. It's taken the holy out of the actual day. A growing number of people in our country are becoming more and more ignorant. Are becoming more and more ignorant of Independence Day and the meaning thereof. In an adult survey, this isn't like 5-year-olds, this is an adult survey, by Newsweek in 2011, 6% of adults could not circle Independence Day on a calendar. They could not find the 4th of July on a calendar. In a 2010 Marist poll indicated that 26% of U.S. residents didn't even know we declared our independence from Britain. 26% of Americans say, what? We're free from Britain? In a 2011 ABC survey of American teenagers, that's 2011, that means they're all voting now. Of those who are new voters, 14% of them thought we declared our independence from France. And another 5% thought we broke away from the tyrannous Canadians. 15% of the same teenagers did not know the Declaration of Independence was on July 4th, 1776. Another 9% said that day was the ratification of the Constitution that did not occur until 13 years later. 17% of those American teenagers who are now voting did not know there were 13 colonies. Quote, when you look at these numbers, it means that more than 5 million U.S. teenagers don't understand the true meaning of Independence Day. And folks, it's gotten way, way worse since then. That was Colin Campbell, head of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. So I'd like to, this morning, take a little trip and then have biblical reflection after it. This is Independence Hall. I've been there a number of times. It's in Philadelphia. This is where 246 years ago today, on July 4th, 1776, Independence Hall, representatives of 13 colonies, because when Britain established this over here, basically what happened was they said, okay, we're going to have different colonies, colony. So they had 13 colonies, and Britain became very oppressive. The Episcopalian Church. See, they had the church in England. They told you how to worship, when to worship. You're going to worship the way we do. You don't have right to privacy. Soldiers can come in, take what they want from you. They can even just stay at your place. Why have Motel 6 when they could just take their stuff? They could do anything they wanted to, and they taxed them without representation, which led to no taxation without representation. Imagine somebody, at least in this government, they tax you. You have some kind of say at a ballot box or something. You could do something, but they didn't have that there. It was illegal for you to protest those things. And so they wrote down a list of indictments against him, the King of England, King George III. The Declaration of Independence, a one-page document written by the personal hand of Thomas Jefferson and signed by 56 of what we call the Founding Fathers, was a list of 27 indictments against Britain, the British government, and British rule. The first 12 indictments were charged the king with instituting a tyrannical government in place of representative government. See, in England, you had the Parliament. You could do certain things there. Now, they were somewhat limited, but the king, he's a dictator. He told you what you had to do. So the first 12 charges in the Declaration of Independence, the indictments are, you're a tyrant. Second, in 13 through 22, charge the king for subjecting the colonies to legislation without their consent or representation. They were saying, listen, we don't have a say. We're just nothing but slaves. That's not why we came here. And then indictments 24 through 27 charge the king with actions of war, that you have warred against us. You're hiring foreign mercenaries to come in here and kill us. You're killing and kidnapping of citizens, destruction of property, and forced military service for Britain. They were slaves to Britain. And that's why they originally left, because they got tired of all the slavery in Europe under monarchs and tyrants. And so they said, that's it. I'm hopping a ship with no Dramamine, and I'm going to go all the way across there, and I'm going to fight Indians. I'm going to do all this. I'm going to have to start over, but at least I won't have to deal with that. Well, the tyranny then extended over to them. And with that, the delegates signed the declaration against the most powerful kingdom in the world at that time. And it was a dangerous thing and would most certainly lead to war with Britain. Ben Franklin, the oldest of the 56 signers of this declaration, here's what he said. We must hang together, gentlemen, else we shall most assuredly hang separately. It was a death sentence. Nearly every one of those 56 founding fathers lost everything they had and had to start over again. It was pretty serious. Do you think, like let's say in Chapman, where I live, if the Chapmanites, that's what we call ourselves, the Chaptonians is what we used to be known as, but if we said, we're not paying taxes, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, do you not think the government's going to come in and tell us and take everything we have? Well, Britain was far worse. They didn't even have to have a trial. You're nothing but just pawns in my money-making scheme to ship things back to me. They would come in, take a guy's property, everything they had, burn their homes, kill their families, no trial, just hang people up by the neck. And to make them feel better, they'd hire people like mercenaries, like the Hessians or others, to come in and do their work for them. And so, this is a pretty serious thing leading up to that. Our forefathers laid it all on the line so that they could have freedom from a tyrant named King George and his cronies. And this found an opening this was the basis of the opening of this document that we have called the Declaration of Independence. It's basically saying, we ain't following you anymore. You got that? It's a big old letter, one page, beautifully written. Look what it says. It's called the Declaration of Independence. It's anchored in the laws of nature and of nature's God. That's an exact quote. That comes from Blackstone's commentary in 1647, which says all law should follow after the God who created everything, the laws of nature and of nature's God. Listen to what he says. These truths are self-evident that all men are created equal. You know the thing, right? You know the thing, that they are endowed with by their Creator, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights among our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Doesn't say happiness, you get to pursue it. Doesn't mean that you have happiness. But the point is, in the opening of the document, they come right out and they say, listen, everything we're writing, the whole basis of the declaration that we have is based on this key point, that our rights, they come from a creator. They don't come from a man. They come from a creator. And then it ends in a similar way, mentioning God twice there. So 6 times it identifies the creator God as the source of rights. It mentions him 6 times in a one-page document. And that will be the basis of why that's it. We're going to get independence now. They were quoting Sir William Blackstone's commentary, which is ironic because that is a British publication of the basis of law there. And King George had stifled their lives, taken their liberties, and destroyed their national pursuit of happiness in God. The core reason they mustered up strength to even write the Declaration of Independence was because their fundamental belief that they were doing the right thing in the eyes of the Creator. God is watching, and what you're doing is not godly. And so this is further emphasized in the closing words of the document. I think I have those here, right here. Appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, and with a firm reliance on the protection of, look what it says, divine providence. It started with God. It ended with God. This was why they were breaking away. That's the one that got them the most. When people could read in the Bible and say, what you're doing isn't right, I'm not doing it. If you don't know where you're at, how can you know where you're going? And if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. They were told, okay, over and over again. Now, let me just not use that as an example. This happened in the Bible all the time. Ooh, I'll forget where we were, and then we'll go right back to where we were at. The Jews were to remember in the Passover that they were slaves delivered from Egypt. Deuteronomy 5, verse 15. That was their job. They were to remember that. But they did not. Psalm 106, verse 7 says, our fathers in Egypt did not understand your wonders. They did not remember your abundant kindness, but rebelled by the sea at the Red Sea. You think about that. They saw 9 months of plagues. Now, we've had a lot of bad weather this year already. I mean, I haven't seen so much wind. I'm still cleaning up trees, and I got 4 more months of tree cleanup. Still, just from this year already. Imagine if we had brimstone falling from the sky, 3 days of complete blackness, that Junction City was taking over in frogs so much that they were in your bed. That you had plagues, that the death of every firstborn. I mean, we're talking some major things. In a 9-month period, I doubt we're going to be saying that's peculiar. We're going to be saying, whoa, what's happening here? And this hairy dude with the cane, the staff keeps walking up, and then he leaves, and this happens. They knew what was going on. But yet, right after the Passover, they had their backs up against the Red Sea, and they're saying, oh, look, you brought us out here to die. Now they're doubting. And then 50 days later after the Passover, only 50 days after the Passover, they're already building an idol to the calf god. The heart of man is deceitfully wicked. Who can know it, Jeremiah 17:9? We're rotten to the core, bad to the bone. We default to the lowest common denominator. They were to remember that God called them out to live for Him in Deuteronomy 10:15, but they did not. Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 7 says this, they refused to listen and did not remember. That's the danger. That's the big danger. In the time of the judges, they were constantly being enslaved to the enemy governments of not remembering what God commanded. Judges chapter 8:34 says, thus the sons of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who delivered them from the hands of their enemies on every side, all the way to Babylon. Destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC. The Jews would forget their roots in God, Isaiah 5:13. Therefore my people go into exile due to their lack of knowledge. What knowledge? Knowledge on the Bible category in jeopardy? Is that what he was talking about? Was it knowledge on how to properly make chocolate chip cookies in a stone oven? No. They died because they lacked the knowledge of application of history to their today living circumstances. That's what they lacked in knowledge. When a nation forgets their God, freedom, connection, that the nation will falter. David said in Psalm 14:1, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God." Israel forgot their God and became a nation of fools. They perished because they did not retain that knowledge. Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. We as a nation, that's not how our nation started. I don't care what you think of the nation now. You may hate your nation. I don't know. It makes no sense for you to hate your nation because nations are made up of people, and in order to hate your nation, you got to hate people. So why don't you process that? Inscribed upon the Liberty Bell. How many here have seen the Liberty Bell? Raise your hand. Okay, it used to be up in the tower of Independence Hall. Then they moved it down. It's a few blocks away. They got it inside. I remember when they didn't have it inside, then they built that big thing. And let me tell you, it's a disaster trying to get down there and see it. And what I mean by that, everything's under construction. There's crime all around. No parking. I mean, Superman wouldn't even fly in to read that thing now. But here's what it says on the Liberty Bell. Proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. That comes from our Bible, inscribed on the bell, which hung in the bell tower of Independence Hall the day they signed that document. There would be no better place to sign that. Liberty. That's why they call it the Liberty Bell, because they were declaring independence at that point. They knew their freedoms must be based in God, because if it were based in man, they can take it away. Think about that. Okay? Paul warned about the decline of nations. You want to know what happens when we get historical dementia? You want to know what happens? He described in Romans 1:20, "For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through that which has been seen, so that they are without excuse." You follow that line there? When people start suppressing truth, the only thing that's allowed is a lie. And there's a lie, there's huge lies going around the world today. I mean, I can't, you know, I think it's Isaiah chapter 5, 28 and 29. "Woe to those who call good evil and evil good, who substitute light for darkness and darkness for light. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight." Before every nation ever falls historically, they disconnect from the history, lose their identity, and try to take on another one. And there has been a constant attempt in our country to undermine all the stuff we knew, to have people go, "Oh, I'm scared," and then say, "Here's your identity." And I'm telling you, we don't learn from past mistakes if we don't remember past mistakes. Peter warned of a time in the last days. 2 Peter 3 through 5. Now, I'm not saying, it's the end of the world. You won't see me on the corner of a sign with bug eyes and a big sign saying it's the end of the world. When he's talking about the last days, he's referring to in the Christian dispensation. He said, "When mockers will come with their mocking, following after their own lust." We're a lust-driven people. We're a lawless people now. We're either governed by law or not. When you stop at a stop sign, why is that stop sign there? Why did the law mandate you stop? Because if you stop, then it allows somebody else to live. But what if we applied to our traffic some of the lawlessness that we have today in many other aspects? The police officer pulls you over. Is there a problem, officer? Yeah, you ran a stop sign. I don't have to obey the law. We could break law here, here, and here with no punishment, and then we'll go ahead and I have the right to do it too. You know that wouldn't fly. But do you want to live? Do you want to drive on a street where there are no laws? And so this is why they set the country up the way they did. Because they could see through history, and I'm telling you, these early founding fathers, they knew history. They studied it. Thomas Jefferson could write with his left hand in Greek and write in his right hand with Latin at the same time as you dictated, at the speed we're dictating. You know, Ben Franklin, he was constantly inventing things all the time. That was his hobbies. You always think, oh, it's the kite and the key, or something like that. But man, that dude was always inventing. Always inventing. These were some smart guys. But they studied history because if you read their writings, they would cite back to things in history saying, don't go as the way of the Greeks do. Constantly talking about the Greeks. The Greeks went into immorality. And they said, no, you have to have morality, and the law from the Bible needs to support that morality, and we have to have that because man is so debauched that at the point that you turn the key and you let them do everything which is right in their own eyes, as the last book of the last verse of Judges says, everyone did that which was right in their own eyes. They know that man is rotten to the core, bad to the bone. And therefore he needs to be governed by the laws of nature and of nature's God. Because they're higher than what we have. The subjectivism that we have today that we're experiencing is in direct connection to where we no longer learn from history. That's how we learn. That's how we always learn. I'm so glad that I learned to be careful walking when I was 2. Because when I fall now, it hurts more than when I'm 2. That extra 3 feet and 150 pounds is painful. So we're careful based on past experience. History, history, history. If our rights do not come from God, this is their primary argument. If our rights do not come from God, where do they come from? They come from man. And if our rights come from man, they can be taken away. That's scary. If you ever want to blow a liberal's mind, when they say, my right, my right, my right, just ask them, well, now where did you get that right? Where do you get that right? If they're going to be accurate, they're going to go right back to here. The rights I speak of are from God. But if they say man, then don't bellyache when they take it away. Because if man giveth, he could take it away. But if God makes it intrinsic to us as his creation, let no man take away. We get certain rights from God, but must not abuse them in spite of God. Think about that. We get certain rights from God, but must not abuse them in spite of God. Meditate on that for just a second. Little do people understand when they're fleeing from a creator who endowed them with rights, they in essence turn that authority over to man. Because of it, we're perishing due to lack of knowledge. If the situation helpless, hopeless, is there anything we can do in the meantime? Of course there is. So, with this in mind, look at 2 Chronicles 7:14. I'm not helpless and I'm not hopeless, because I've seen it happen over and over again in biblical history, that out of the ashes, God can emerge. 2 Chronicles 7:14, God said, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Very, very important. That has to start in our own house. Don't worry about going out and imposing on. We're to be examples to a crooked and perverse generation. And the best way to do that is to live it first. How we treat each other in the household of God, the church of the living God, the pillar and ground of the truth without controversy, 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 15, is indicative of what the world will see with the light coming out of this church. Don't kick God out of the house and expect to keep the moral values with it. It's not going to work. And so think on these things. Here's your challenge. We embrace the God-given right to be saved when exercising it in baptism. You know what the first Bill of Rights is? The First Amendment to the Constitution? Freedom of religion. They put that one first. They said we're going to have freedom to worship God the way we see fit to do it.